Hey everyone! Thank you so much for joining Archangel Alts. Gonna switch right over here. Just felt like a time to, don't want to be too early in the game and pre-guess the game before it's over. Obviously, so many times things change right when you need them to do the thing that they're doing. But been watching the ebb and flow of IOST and is getting to that place where it's very close to finally reaching these huge goal-setting positions. We do have two that we're going back to when it was at its absolute peak, and you can see we just missed these when we saw an entry point in the 340 to 380 range, and it just didn't do that one. The one time that it doesn't do the thing that you think is the thing that it's going to do with the stuff with the things. But going back here. And I know this is a little bit of a rambling, before getting into the really specific nitty-gritty stuff, but this is the position that, inspired going ahead and jumping in on this. Happy Easter Sunday to you guys, literally 16 minutes in. And if we were to judge Easter just based on Bitcoin's shortest term stuff, maybe it's not such a huge Easter fan after all. I don't know, but we will certainly find out. But you can see, 370 as a peak here, and then of course that was a slow, steady rise to that, which kind of validates that it was worth it once it got there. But looking at previous trends, this is your 260-ish range, which is exactly where it is now, and that had come down from. Here's our 300 break, which covers two of our very large positions there. And then here is that breaking point going back to, what was that, July-ish, around there. And so that would take care of that. And then here's where the peak was. I really kind of shave off the peak and look around the volume. The volume covered plenty of room around 380. And then that had come down from the same thing, almost to 500. And the 500 had come down from over 600. The 600 had come down from over 800, et cetera, et cetera. Give me 1 second. I don't know why going live is the thing that makes me sneeze. I haven't sneezed for probably a day. All right, so... anyway, you can see that there's several different places that have validated things in the 300 and 400 range without any trouble. There's an 875, there was a 600, there's a 700, 845, and a 600 and a 700, and a 600 and a 400 and a 300, and then it had bottomed out at 160. That was when it had about 90% loss overall. Well, 80 something percent loss overall. So this most recent one. It doesn't have to get up here for me to be excited about clearing in this range here. Super, super, super cool if it can. Just thought it would make sense to, be around and be live when that happens. Let's not say if, let's just say when. All right, good. Thank you, Lord, for the blessing of the mute button. It is so helpful for things like coughing or sneezing or taking sips of water or coffee. Fantastic stuff. So let's do the typical thing that we would do when we come to do a market analysis. Thank you so much, guys, for joining Archangel Alts. This is Gordon Freeman, the free man, helping to lead you from the darkness into the light through the crypto revolution. Mass adoption equals liquidity. That's right. Mass adoption is going to come from liquidity. No matter what version of things that you believe, what you think the best reasons or pathways to mass adoption are going to be, they all basically come down to liquidity in the marketplace. If you can't move it back and forth, it's not going to go anywhere. So mass adoption equals liquidity. Liquidity, the best way for that to happen, it comes from trading on a legitimate exchange, meaning that you exchange the value of one cryptocurrency for another, showing that the marketplace has validity. And validity is the same as volume. The volume is the same as liquidity. It's all just a beautiful, all interconnected thing. So, mass adoption comes from liquidity. Liquidity comes from trading on a legitimate exchange. We choose Binance, and here we are. So this is the Bitcoin hovering in the 5,300 range. So we have, in just the recent weeks, we've seen it climb from 3,800 to 4,000. We've seen it cross 4,000 to 4,300. We saw it go $700 straight up to 5,000 from a single person pack-in. A single person or a single distributed group from one person to 10 people with 10,000 BTC units hitting an $80 million pump. And that helped to get it above 5,000, where it seems to have been able to sustain and continue growth. The problem is you have things like what we see right here. This is on the 1 hour, so you can see that this is over several days. This goes back to 4/11. So just looking at like basically the last 10 days, this had a range where even though it came down as low as the 4,900s, it was only hours that it took to pump not just back to where it was before, but to continue the uptrend. So I really consider this from 4,800 to, let's just say, 5,300. So, I mean, that's just a very critical, not only is it about a $400 very steady growth overall, and you can see it's thinning out at just a tiny bit there, so I'm wondering if it's kind of hitting up a bit against its ceiling at this point. But this steady rise, forget about this spike here. That's a little bit more of a volume spike too. But if it is able to grow even in these low volume ranges, that's a really, really, really positive thing through there. The next thing is that it does hit a peak where if the volume is not trending upwards with the value, eventually that starts to seep its way out of Bitcoin into other things. And we don't really necessarily want, the benefits of the altcoin side of things to be at the expense of the Bitcoin side of things. We'd really like to see both of them be able to go up. The only way that that can happen is if there's more trading happening on both sides. So for an example right here, IOST has been showing that it's like, it wants to get up beyond a certain range. But before this most recent thing right here, look at that, 238, which for a low value coin as it is a really low drop. But it was actually covering between 258 and 260, if I remember correctly. I mean, it was hovering between 1 and 2 and 3 points for entire days. And let me see, I don't know if I've readjusted this recently, but okay, yeah, I mean, really, 406 are the older two, so let's see. These are just now our first new huddles. I don't consider something a hold or a huddle in the bad sense of the word. Hold on for a second. Again. Is it the word huddle I'm allergic to? Is that what made me sneeze? It could be. I don't know. Does that make my voice get higher? Okay, so we don't consider something an unwanted hold for until it goes beyond 2 weeks. After about a week, I might be concerned, but the market can change in 2-week cycles so dramatically. You really can't blame a short term if it just barely dips in the wrong direction, and that it's strong enough that there's just no point in taking a loss on something that you just feel extremely confident will perform the way you need it to over time. But once it gets beyond 2 weeks, the likelihood, because the whole market has always, kind of been along bear trends, the likelihood that it goes down and out of range before it takes a while to come back into range, maybe a week, maybe a month, maybe several months. You might even have some things that could border on a year. We haven't gotten to that point on anything. But, once it gets beyond 2 weeks, I consider it a hold, a legitimate hold, it's not going to happen right this instant kind of hold. So these two guys are still, valid. They're just in circulation, taking a little bit longer than that tiny little window that it had to do exactly what we needed. We actually had one that started to fill, and it literally came to our goal. So on paper, we were already correct about it, but it didn't have the volume to finish that. So we had actually seen the volume go from in the 3,000s at a time when it was actually moving pretty well. You can see these spikes. These were very nice at that time. To being as low as like in the 300 BTC range, which I mean, it at this value, it was just teeter-tottering back and forth between just a couple of points. Sad little satoshis, or sats as they're called for a value. So that was kind of a finger on the pulse of the health of the overall market. Truth of the matter, volume is very low. It's been dropping. So once it gets below 100 million 24-hour volume on Binance, measured in Tether, measuring the value of $1 in Tether, once it goes beyond that threshold, it usually starts to drop in volume pretty substantially. When it gets into the 80 million range, or 70 or 60 or even 50, as we've seen a couple of times recently, once it gets down there, you start to see spikes happen in the altcoins. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that, partially, it's an actual algorithmic, technical, mechanical, mathematical calculation that happens automatically as that tsunami of volume shifts. So imagine, if anything that you can trade against Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is about half of the market, whether you're trading against fiat or stable coins or the big three, or four or five, whatever you consider to be the top ones, Ethereum, Litecoin, Tron, XRP, and really now Binance Coin. Binance has made it into the big leagues with their coin that really has just provided a very smart ERC20 option for paying your fees and getting a discount on fees. The question I have is, once it goes up this much in value, are you better off to pay just the standard amount in fees, or is the 0.05% discount for paying with the Binance coin worth it once it is worth so much more money? I haven't quite assessed where that line is. I'm not quite as smart at the pure fundamental math side of things as I would like to be. But my instinct tells me that I would look at BNB more as if you consider the uptrend an investment, then see it more as that than as a tool for savings. And they're going to be doing their mainnet for their very own blockchain very, very soon, right around the corner. And so if you're thinking of going in on BNB, the question I would ask is whether it's best to do it while it's still an ERC20, and then you have to go through the shift over process to join in with their mainnet. And who knows, every once in a while there's always the potential for a little bit of a technical glitch. So I just personally, I think that its value is going to continue to climb over the long haul unless something unforeseen happens. So it makes sense to me that you invest in BNB once it is stabilized into its own new thing. So you can actually see right here everything that you can currently trade against BTC. And if Bitcoin, BAT, the basic attention token, I like to say basic attention span. I don't know if it really is funny or not, but I like it. But you can see over here traded against Bitcoin. It's a 19% difference. FET is a 17, IOST 14. Right now with Bitcoin, 15, 13, and 11. So, and KNC takes the lead. And I don't know if KNC is tradable against. No, it is not. That's why we don't see that one over here. So, not a huge difference in the potential earning over there. We have hit the 270 mark again. So that kind of is the crucial crossing. I'm curious just how touchy it is now that it is getting so close to that and the volume's actually kicking up. It's 1372. Not actually doing this as a trading video, but yeah, I'm curious. Okay, so if I put fairly small positions where it's working on clearing these. Pardon me. Nose sounds like Gordon Freeman. Apologize. So I don't know if you noticed, but there's a tiny little blip from 271 to 270 when I put that first one in. It's amazing how even when things pick up pretty substantially in volume and it's making up this average over here that it hadn't done for a very long time. Trying to work our way up here. That'll be great. but there's still not always, very large positions. There's a 6 Bitcoin, a 5, here's a 4. So it's loaded up fairly heavy. Somebody is kind of boxing it in right here. They have 6 and 5 here to 8 and 7. So it is definitely weighted towards expecting that as Bitcoin's volume goes down, that it makes it slightly easier for the volume in other coins such as this to go up. So I find it curious to see, if I were to put in a position where things are a little bit lighter, what does that kind of force the order book to recalculate a little bit? So there's a little bit there, and check this out, a little bit there, and then I kind of let it sit and wait, recalibrate. Isn't that great? I'm a poet and I didn't even recognize it. All right, so if we put this to here, it's amazing. I mean, it's got so much potential for real growth, and it just hasn't even kind of kicked back into that. Okay, it's starting to buy in on the 270s. This is BR2B looking good. Yes, we find this exciting. We do. Okay, if it can clear that 7 Bitcoin while there's less than 6 there, it calibrates based on the positions that are sitting around it. Okay, I'm a little bit curious. 262, what effect is that going to have? Things are picking up a little bit. We have 383 where we had 370 something before. So it's eating through those positions. It's a very good thing. Okay, I'm not going to mess with this too much more. I'm going to let it do its own thing unless I really feel the need to jump in there. So, typically if somebody were looking at, what are the trends, or, what are the uptimes and downtimes in a market, truth of the matter is everything with Bitcoin and everything with trading, alternative currencies, coins, the cryptocurrency world version of doing, foreign exchange, doing trading different fiat currencies for one another, forex trading. In that example, we can see a lot of things that you have to learn the rules in order to break them, or learn the rules in order to say, okay, yeah, that's what I expect, but throw that out. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but definitely throw out the bathwater. What does Adam Sandler have to do with this? I really don't know. It just kind of, I think that it's an amazing talent to do impressions, but I've noticed that I can do really good impressions, but as long as they're always at the wrong thing. If I try to do a Russian accent, then it's probably going to be German. If I try to do a German accent, it's probably going to be a fantastic French accent. And, if I try to do any of those, there's a very good chance that I'm just going to sound like a vampire. So. Pretty good, yes. So, funny stuff. What on earth is he talking about? What is this guy going on about? So, looking at what Bitcoin is doing right now, 5,300, I'm always kind of looking for what is the trend that lets you know that things have stabilized. It looks to me like it's been climbing upward more and more, kind of towards a resistance level. Somewhere as it tries to cross above 5,300, it seems to kind of hit against the ceiling a little bit. So if you kind of think about it like, let's say that you're standing in a room and it has a fairly high ceiling and it's a really big open room, and you're bouncing something very buoyant or something very bouncy like a tennis ball or like a super ball. I don't know if people even know what those are anymore, a racquetball, something. And you've got a racket and you're bouncing it against the ceiling. And you know that you're not going to hit it so hard that it goes through the ceiling, But if you hit it just hard enough to tap off of the ceiling, it's going to come down kind of close to just regular gravity speed. But if you hit it really hard against that ceiling, it's going to come back with some of that same velocity. Some of the equilibrium is going to bounce back at you. Things in motion tend to stay in motion. Things at rest tend to stay at rest. Something along those lines. So the resistance line kind of seems to work the same way when it's real natural movement. It's not just individuals with gobs of money that are going to force something through or have an influence from a pump standpoint that they have enough to pump before they dump. But I kind of see it. This top line of the Bollinger, I think, is actually very accurate. And in my opinion, it is supported at the 1 hour fairly strong by the fact that somewhere really right where it is right now, that kind of 5290-ish range is really where the volume can support this, even a little bit less. So I think that it's starting to slip a little bit, which I think is okay. If we can, remain impressed by Bitcoin averaging above 5,000 for a while, I think that it can make its next climb to 6. And if it makes it over 6 and can consistently start to scale towards 6,500, we're going to see the beginning of what I think could potentially, possibly, maybe, almost not sure, but kind of am really, could be the bull run. Could actually be a bull run. Now, the bulls versus the bears is regular market activity. That's the ebb and flow that's always happening. Things are kind of bullish right now. Things are kind of bearish right now. The bulls are proving that it's, they're giving it to the bears, et cetera, et cetera. That warring back and forth is definitely an ongoing thing. It's a day by day, week by week, sometimes even hour by hour, minute by minute thing. There's no question. There is not just, a little bit up, a little bit down, normal ebb and flow. There's definitely some of that real warring going on back and forth. That definitely push-pull, a real struggle back and forth. You can see it, you can sense it when you're working on the market. But the overall trends tend to happen over weeks and months and sometimes even years. And it's so familiar in traditional stock trading, even though you have a lot of different variables, you have a lot of different versions of that. You can just basically buy and sell shares of companies, meaning that you own a very small fraction of the earnings from that company or the growth potential of that company. There's options and futures trading. There's bonds. There's mutual funds, which you could say, okay, I want to put my money basically into a pool that some experts have decided a really good cross-section of several different companies that I should own a little bit of this, a little bit of that from. Is damn in there with that? Yes. All those different examples, the main thing is that your penny stocks and your brand new up-and-comers, those are kind of the fringe, the higher risk things that the average person is probably discouraged from getting involved in. But you have things like everything from Delta to Coca-Cola to, oh goodness, the tech stocks, the Googles and Amazons and Apples, which, they are just as susceptible to a really bad stock day when they announce a quarterly updates that are not very positive. But overall, they've had massive growth, and you can track them for years. Well, there's no such thing as checking out a couple of decades worth of growth for the majority of, I say the majority, for any cryptocurrencies. The grandfather has been around for eons, goes back to 2008 when there was even mention of digital money backed by cryptography. And then I think 2009 was the launch of Bitcoin. And the real dreamers, the real true believers in the beginning, oh my goodness, anybody that imagined, a Bitcoin barely worth a penny when it reached its first dollar, and it was so easy to mine, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Bitcoins over and over again. It must have been so hard to imagine what it would be like with $1 Bitcoin, and then $1 Bitcoin going to 10. Well, that's 10x. Can you imagine anything that's like literally a penny stock that is now, you're looking at whether it can rebound from a very weak 5,200? Oh my goodness. Imagine if you, literally, if you owned $1 worth of Bitcoin with it being worth at a penny, and you owned a dollar's worth, let's say, when it was at a penny, that means you have 100 Bitcoins. I mean, that's 5,000 times 100 right now. Oh my goodness. And if you are lucky enough to own a single Bitcoin right now, so I mean, you're literally going in right now today with $5,300 with your fees, being in to own your one glorious, beautiful Bitcoin. There is such a good chance, such a good likelihood we're looking at a $50, $60, $70,000 Bitcoin sometime in the future, sometime probably not in a very long future. But the only thing in that path is mass adoption. So my question to you is where that comes from. Is mass adoption going to happen as a result of people getting the word out, people buying a fraction of a Bitcoin, whatever amount they can afford? Or are we going to wait and say, hey, when they regulate blah, 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 then people will be less scared of crypto and they'll decide to go in? JP Morgan's coin supersedes XRP, or XRP wins out, or they both find their sector that makes sense. Tron does or does not make it into more of a mainstream with the gamification of things. Oh, IOST, you don't have to drop back down. You're getting so close. You're getting so close. You made it up 10%. Now just do 10% more and we'll all be thrilled. Come on, IOST, you can do it. So, does mass adoption wait until regulation makes the crypto world a little less scary for the masses? Does it wait for the financial sector, more and more banks to say, okay, we're not against blockchain, but we just don't want other people's coins. So, we'll let you transact with this, but not that. You can use these, but not those, that kind of thing. Will Coinbase iron out some of the, the people that are kind of anti-Coinbase because they have invested in some information-based technologies to better serve their customers and to provide proper transparency to governments? People don't like the kind of anti-privacy kind of sentiment of things there. So that could shake things up a little bit, because one of the easiest entry points into crypto is to buy it through Coinbase. Just set up an account that connects your bank account or a credit card, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe that you can still withdraw into your PayPal account. If that's the case, I think that that's an excellent option for others to follow in kind. Yes, sirree. So mass adoption really comes down to whether there is a big enough motivation within the true believer crypto community, which I really think there should be. And if so, then there needs to be consensus on what that looks like. So I've really tried to boil it down, and I feel so strongly, I absolutely firmly believe that liquidity is the answer, and an exchange is, it's an immediate solution. You get 1 million people. Let's say we've crossed the lines, we've found the solution, and we just need to reach 1 million people. And each of them has, they have $100, $500, $1,000. Let's say 10% of them have enough for a Bitcoin, and 2% have enough for 10 Bitcoins. You add all that in. Let's say that ends up being about, let's average it around to about $300 million worth of extra volume coming in. Okay, so let's say that $100 million of that increases on Bitcoin's side, back and forth between just Bitcoin and whatever stable coins. Let's say Tether mostly, but then a little bit of PAX, a little bit of USDS, a little bit of TUSD. But mostly Tether. Tether is the biggest one. Okay, so let's say just 100 billion of that. Well, today, that would mean in a weak point where it is able to sustain Bitcoin in the 5290 range at 100 million, would have the gusto to at least go up another 2%, 3% from that at $200 million, 24-hour volume. But just as importantly, it increases the sentiment. It increases people's confidence that there is more volume. Now, let's say that on the altcoin side of things, where all of these guys are being traded against Bitcoin, okay, Not the $100 million that we see it with Bitcoin trading just against this one stablecoin, okay? But all of these guys trading against Bitcoin. Well, right now, the top volume, well, let me set this to volume. Okay. BNB at 15,000 BTC 24-hour volume, and it's been going up, and it's been on its way up, and just more up and up. Here is BNB. Having a nice little spike while Bitcoin is going down. This is actually what BNB has done. You know what? I don't have it set at the right thing. It's actually following Bitcoin exactly. I take that back. Yep, I do. So, BNB with 15,000 BTC. Okay, so 15,000. We're going to do a little bit of math. You know, math don't hurt me. So let's just pretend a $5,000 Bitcoin times 15,000. Okay, so that's $75 million of volume traded in one day on one coin. Okay, so 200 billion, let's say just the top other coins, 4, 8, 10, 12, 14. Okay, so let's say just like the top 10 coins are 150 million. So add 250, so be $400 million between the top 10 coins. Okay, there's a very good chance that we would see about 3% up, 2.5% to 1 for all of these, which means that there are, even a 1%. That means that there's probably a good 10 or so positions of people whose trades would have sold at a profit more than where they currently are. If anybody has that extra little 0.5%, extra 1% for whatever they're trying to earn, and it goes through just because of that extra volume that was there to help push it through, the buying and the selling, the buying over and over and over again, that would be that same amount. Let's say, an extra $10-20 million worth of profit that came from those things that can immediately translate into buying a little bit more Bitcoin or trading a little bit more altcoin against Bitcoin. It helps to fuel that process. So it's very easy for an extra $1 million to not just be $1 million more on the exchange that is adding value in transaction fees that help fuel the process, but it opens up a small percentage of that on top of that doesn't exist, to where there's more circulation as a result. So you might see $1 million of extra volume, and then that actually helps 10, 20, 30, maybe even $100,000 of extra volume that wasn't there before, and then that helps another 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 worth of volume that wasn't there before. That it's got a nice little kind of reverse exponential growth kind of thing going on. There's a little bit of a boost going on in there, a little bit of nice, a little bit of hoop hoop hoop. So lots of really interesting things. So imagine the value of, boom, you've reached 1 million new people who have decided they're going to risk just $100 in Bitcoin, $300 in Bitcoin, maybe 1,000, and then a very small percentage that can own between like 1 to 10 Bitcoins. Out of all of those people, and it brings $100 billion here and there to extra volume. That in turn is going to boost the value of things by just enough of that margin that people are clearing their positions at a profit and going right back in. And that has that extra added acceleration point to it. In which case, if you've got 1 million people who are getting involved in this and they've seen the positive response of their inclusion, and somebody like myself and other people can follow the same process to encourage them to continue forth with those things that are working, then I would imagine that you could imagine the good things that can come from that. Is that, if every single one of those people told one other person, then you could double that effect in an extremely short time. It's not really all that hard to get 1 million people to learn something if you put the message out there on the networks in a heartbeat. Something huge happened in Bitcoin, and it encouraged 1 out of 24 million viewers, 1 million out of 24 million viewers to go buy for their first $10, $100, $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. Guarantee you, at least let's say 1/10 of them after their first week or two experience, are going to say, I've been learning this really tricky or fascinating or whatever stuff. It's kind of like the stock market, but I only had to do this much, and I'm going to wait and see. I think it's going to go up to $1 million next week. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident my $100 is about to be $1 million. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think it works that way. But so let's say that the number of people that are sharing and telling other people reaches that point where 1 million eventually turns into 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16. Somewhere in that range, you are going to have people trickling into the exchanges, and that's kind of the point that I want to make. Is that there are some people who are very loyal to other exchanges. I know there's Coinbase Pro and Kraken, and there's BitMEX, Bittrex, Bitfinex, all the bit-like named things of stuff. And there's no question in my mind that Binance is the best. And I hope that he stays on the path that he's staying on. I can't stress strongly enough how important it is that mass adoption comes as a grassroots effort, as a ground level, real people telling real people about real stuff, as opposed to waiting for banks to say, you know what, it's time for us to cash in. Blockchain is going to be a thing. It is a thing. It's kind of the thing. Let's make it our thing. And blockchain doesn't equal blockchain, meaning that it can be a lot of different things. There's not a single set standard. And without there being one single solitary set standard, it could be used for projects that are very much in line with the thinking and philosophy that makes the potential for crypto, with privacy, with decentralization, with support from positive, forward-thinking communities. All those aspects are absolutely there. But do you really think that the banker version of that is a good thing? Centralization, okay, there are our own centralization issues within the crypto community, and then there's the concern of the outside world coming into this one. And those things are absolutely going to happen. They're going to be things that we battle against in the fight for freedom and democratization of money. It's such a fascinating time in history. We are living in one of the most significant times in the history of history. And yes, this is just money. There are more important things than money. But money intrinsically, it in itself is a completely neutral thing. It is a tool, it is a mechanism by which other things can happen. And if we look at what those other things are, we should fully be able to understand that a certain level of freedom, a certain level of privacy, improving things like capacity and bandwidth and the ability to transact, to do so cheaply or for free, as opposed to highly centralized, regulated decision makers about increases in transaction fees and those sorts of things. Competition in any market is always a good thing. So if there's one that's free and there's one that's too expensive, everything should push it down to the lower common denominator over time. That is the way that it should work. So we should be able to see like the top, let's just say 20 best coins over time. Bitcoin and whatever its other shared market values should be able to transact very quickly, and they should be able to translate into a wider base and find wider uses, whether it's just replacing regular bank transactions or whether it's online purchase, trust, safety, some kind of verified backing, to give an extra layer of protection and safety. People being able to pay directly to each other for assets, and building in smart contracts which say, I only release your money when this or that happened. Really cool things that can be done without there being an intermediary. All those things can be really good. It can be the assets managed within virtual games, within mining within games can represent real mining on the blockchain. Oh my goodness, so many different things that have barely even started to take place. So much of a huge market. Now, I found it very interesting. I was looking at, just kind of what's happening in different parts of the industry. And I decided to take a look at what kind of cryptocurrency related projects people were doing for Kickstarters. And it was very insightful. I saw that there's a wide range of ideas and almost nothing getting funded. This project unsuccessfully funded over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Just made me realize just how small the actual crypto community really is. So many people, especially out there on Twitter. Twitter is like a huge thing where our crypto stuff is discussed. And let me get rid of this updates thing. I know I got updates. You don't gotta tell me. I know it. Very active. I think Telegram may or may not be more active than Twitter. To me, it seems a lot more spammy than the Twitter interactions that I've seen. I feel like I'm actually getting to know the people as opposed to, having things pushed to me like Telegram. And there's a lot of things that just seem like be very careful. I don't necessarily trust some of the groups and the things that they're pushing. There's lots of signals there as well. And on Discord, you see a lot of the signals-based stuff in the pump groups. Not really so much that they're not legitimate, but that there's a lot of not official sharing of information. People charging for secondhand information from other people's paid programs and stuff. But you put all that stuff together, and I think Twitter is a pretty good example of what the crypto community is like. And everybody has an impression that everybody knows this stuff. And I'm telling you, most people still don't know anything about it. We have barely touched the tens of thousands and thousands and thousands of new people that it can enter the market. So some of the true believers, the people that go back to the earliest years to present, who are really into crypto, they have a holder's philosophy, a hodler's philosophy. HODL, hold on for dear life. To us, it means that, if we have not successfully completed a day trade, that over time it becomes a hold or a hodl. We're holding on for dear life. For our reason is that we're not going to lose it at a loss, that we're going to hold it until it reaches the profit we expected it to reach the first time around. But the traditional true believers, the first wave of crypto believers, their idea of hodl is that I'm never going to sell this thing. And, in one sense, I can appreciate somebody saying, I bought this when it was $100 and I'm going to hold on to it until it's worth $1 million. And, people, when it went to 10 grand, they're saying, like, are you crazy? Are you going to sell it now? They'll be like, nope, not going to do it now. Then it goes to 20 and they're like, surely now. They'll be like, nope. Okay. And then it comes all the way back down to 3,000. And they're saying, like, okay, how do you feel now? It's like, nope. I'm holding on until $1 million. And they think that you are a traitor, Traitor, if you are a trader, Trader, meaning that if you trade, if you bought this and you sold it, you're a sellout. If you're not holding it, then you're a sellout. Well, here's the thing, is these things go up and down. And when you are transacting, you are part of the activity taking place across the blockchain. You are filling and completing buffers of information being stored across lots of different people's computers that are completing transactions. And certain amounts of that coin are released to those people who are providing the CPU or GPU power to allow the math to take place for those blockchains. They get paid by you being out there buying and selling stuff. And Binance, which I think is, if it's not already, it's definitely entering into the $1 billion value company. And I think that all their launchpad projects and Binance Academy stuff and the transitioning of BNB into an all-star top 10 type coin, all these different things, their growth is the growth of crypto. Companies like this get featured in more business sectors outside of cryptocurrency. People will become more and more aware of them. And here's the thing, too, is that people need to have a global mentality that Chinese or Asian, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, different Asian sector companies aren't going to grow to the point where they receive recognition for excellence in business solely because of the fact that they have such large tech-based populations to back their growth. There's, I wouldn't say that it's a stigma or a stereotype so much as, that global trade has kind of backed the legitimate thinking that if it's Asian and it's technology, that it's probably doing that well because they have such a huge population base. There is a growing middle class. There is, even though it is an extremely communist government, it is maintaining that strength by a strong capitalist sector. They do encourage the capitalist sector, but there's also internally a misconception that that's a public-private market, and it's not. I mean, it absolutely owes everything to the communist government in true communist form. But they know that communism doesn't work if it's not financed. So, it's always, fascism has always been a large role in socialism to communism. But, I believe that Binance is one of those companies that can prove that if it keeps an open, collaborative effort with traders from around the world, they're being based in Malta and not wanting to be subject to local regulations should make them able to continue to have the liquidity that it takes to grow volume. So bringing all this back around, every single time I talk, I'm hoping that people hear the message of just how important liquidity is to the overall scheme, and that mass adoption needs to not be something that we wait on for big players to come and do for us. This is something that anybody with a dream or a vision of earning in the crypto sector, building wealth is a positive thing. Money in itself is not evil. Earning money in itself is not evil. In fact, there kind of is a mandate that you be responsible for some level, some aspect of your own destiny as far as trying to build wealth. On the flip side of that, when people are looking for shortcuts, they're looking for easy gains, quick shortcut access. It almost always leads to greed, and greed means that people get dishonest and try to cut corners and not do things the right way. So, healthy mass adoption means that people like you and me, whether it is your first $100 that you put into crypto, whether it is first 1,000, 20,000, 100,000, getting up into the minnows to sharks to whales, the big players, at whatever people start to get into this, that they seek mentorship, that they seek leadership, that they seek thought leaders. We hope to kind of be in that class to where they learn how to not mess it up. You don't want to jump right in with, let's say $200, and then you find that it's really easy to lose it quick. You make a couple of the wrong first few assumptions, watch a couple of bozos with really bad YouTube videos, and you're sunk. You're either not going to tell anybody about it because you're mad or upset or embarrassed, or is not going to encourage them to want to do the same thing if you do tell people about it. So certainly, logically, there's that aspect to things. Then you have somebody who, if you take any kind of similar approach to what I often do, is when I become interested in something, I like to study everything about it. And I challenge other people's opinions about it by looking at, I tend to do searches on, what people are saying on YouTube. I'll kind of take that and I'll kind of try to study just the opposite of it to see whether it holds water. And over time, you kind of get an understanding of your own perspective on things. In this case, we found out very early in the game that we were really good at day trading. I do not necessarily feel the energy and the movement and the vibe, let's say, of the movement on the exchange, trading from alts to bitcoins. I don't necessarily sense it well over long periods of time. So that means that day trading and at the very longest swing trading tends to work best for me. But whenever we do have a hold, the thing is that I've become very familiar with that particular coin's personality on the exchange. I kind of get a strong feeling for just how sensitive it is in Bitcoin's movement and how likely it is that if Bitcoin moves too quickly in one direction or another, if that's going to be a knee jerk that affects my coin. So, we learn a lot from not necessarily our mistakes, but things that hold longer than you expect them to. But you also, you learn whether you have an aptitude in certain areas. And for us, my personality is to be very cautious and to be extremely calculated, to weigh every side of something before making a decision. I found that my natural instinctive talent is to move at a ridiculously fast pace, and something that I would not think is in my personality at all. But I seem to have a very high threshold for the most stressful version of trading something. It's pretty remarkable. But where that leaves us with this stuff is that we are in a very challenging time, because from the outside looking in, anybody would look at a $5,200 Bitcoin and think, obviously, that's better than a $4,000 Bitcoin. Everybody must be very pleased. And the answer to that is that I would be very pleased with a $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000 Bitcoin if I were seeing the volume go up with the value. If I see that the volume is, it goes up when it spikes, and then there's a steady up, and then it starts to lose that momentum, and the volume keeps going down, there's only a certain amount of time that it can sustain that before someone either has to come along and spike it back up, and that's the plan. Waiting for the volume to drop low before, using that as a strategic entry point, or bad things happen. And, you can imagine if Bitcoin is at $100 million, 24-hour volume on Binance measured in Tether, that things are going to be pretty low in comparison for the alts. And right now they are, the volume in alternative currencies has been about as low as I've ever seen. And so I want you to see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's WTC. 13. There are 13 coins out of, I'm going to just scroll so you can see how many more there are. Only 13 of all of these coins are above 1,000 BTC 24-hour volume. That is unbelievably low. And look at this. I mean, the lowest volume is only 11 Bitcoins almost 11 Bitcoins traded in 24 hours. I mean, that's $50,000 on Binance. And now, $50,000 24-hour volume, honestly, is still fairly big for hundreds of coins on Cryptopia. But there are so many scammy coins on Cryptopia and a lot of the other very small exchanges. You could see 1 or 2 Bitcoin. You could see even half a Bitcoin being traded in a day. Trust me, you do not want to see an 11 Bitcoin 24-hour volume on Binance. 50 should be the smallest one. And look at that. It takes us all the way to DLT, which is it's not an unknown project. Is only at 50 Bitcoins in a day worth of volume. Hey, I just got all better. Don't So, coming up to here, we have our first 100 Bitcoin. Ion, which has been in the 1,000, 2,000 BTC range more often than not. Ethereum Classic at 111 Bitcoins 24-hour volume. Oh my goodness. I mean, that's so low. It's so low. It's crazy. So, I mean, it takes all the way up to here. Here, Dash. The massive, mega mighty Dash. 203 Bitcoins 24-hour volume. Easily should be 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 BTC. So, I mean, I'm telling you, it is not an exaggeration. Where's our first 500 Bitcoin 24-hour volume? Wabi was number 1 a couple of times for the past couple of weeks. It had, 5,000, 6,000 volume at one point in time. CELR, the newly listed, let's see how far back it goes. It only goes back to, to March. Way into March. And it's at 10th its value, almost. So that didn't take long. Wait a second. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, okay. I didn't want to misspeak there. So let's get it to where we can see where that downtrend. So really 620 was the second wave. That was a couple of days after its first ting. You see. So I think CLR is probably worth... I think that it should be able to get to be an above a 500 measured against Bitcoin. I think it should be able to. But the volume is below 1,000, and it has been kind of a high score thing. Tron, everybody knows Tron. You love it, you hate it. It is Tron. And it's not even trying to get up into the 600 range. And it's less than 1,000 BTC on Tron. All right. So ADA, really should be scoring in the 2,000 range. And it just got knocked down. We had like a $200 position. It's our only thing that we're hodling an ADA in our browser account. And man, we were like right there waiting for it to happen, and it just could not get there. Raven has just been a monster, and it's only at 2,000. So, FET, I'm going to have to do some investigating. I'm behind on having time for my FA more in depth, my fundamentals. Ethereum really should be able to hold 8,000 BTC 24-hour volume traded against Bitcoin, and is just not there. It's not within its range. It just isn't. It isn't. So really proud of IOST for getting into that range. I'm a little bit disappointed. It looks like it's losing that momentum again. And part of that is because Bitcoin is having a little bit of a drop now. Still at 101 million. And the overall trajectory is still good. But if you can look at, it's getting to that line. So question is whether the 1 a.m. Eastern Standard, whether the 2 a.m., 3 a.m., the 5 a.m., 6 a.m., is there going to be an Easter special? Is there going to be a huge influx of any sort of kind of thing? Who knows? I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. What is looming on the horizon there? Eh? If you don't know, and I don't know, then I don't know who knows, yeah? Yeah, okay. So I would imagine that people want to know about Ethereum. So let me tell you about Ethereum. Not looking super fantastic right now, but it'll bounce back. At least its volume is good. In fact, if you are familiar with Ethereum, then I'll just tell you what you already know, that it's probably not a bad buy-in point, but there is a risk that it gets below that 3,200 line again. It's kind of sitting on the cliff, don't know what it's going to do. You should be cautious. E&J has been super fantastic. I think that it is not going to stay above 3,600 before doing some correction, but it really does depend on what Bitcoin does. Raven, I like it as a, keep it on your daily watch list. Do so. You'd be smart to do so. Bitcoin Cash, I would be extremely cautious because some people are talking about delisting the regular Bitcoin Cash because of the whole SV debacle. So be careful there. XRP is just, it's not in its own yet. People are looking for a $2 or two. I've seen some really outrageous claims that it's going to hit 100 like within a month or something. I don't know what they don't know. I know from the fundamentals that are available, kind of looking in the same Ethereum range, it's very possible that it's not going to hold, in the mid sixes. So I would be concerned that the closer and closer it gets to that that 6,000 line, people see it cross and there might be a sell-off. There's a lot of very negative XRP sentiment out there, And I'm not sitting, wholly with the pro or con. I think that it could succeed, absolutely. I think that it could not succeed, absolutely. There's a chance in either direction. Waves has a huge range for growth. It really at least belongs in the 6,000 range, if not the 7,300 at the top. And it's done it recently. It can do it again. So really, especially if you have the circulation where it doesn't affect your main positions, to do a little bit of an intentional hold. If you are circulating $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and you don't mind allotting some of that towards things that'll accumulate, a few hundred in waves below 5,000 is a really smart move. Really smart move. You're getting delisted soon, so I don't know why anybody is still putting in there, but it's finally dropping. Of course, 295, considering how many things should be 1,000 BTC and aren't, that's actually still really way too much money to be in on that. Guys, seriously, what are you thinking? Steam, it belongs at a minimum above 1,000, 10,000 if you're looking at that number, 1,000 if you're looking at this one. If the fundamental analysis matched the technical analysis, the logic behind it, the way that it should, the way you would expect it to, it's really kind of stunning that Steam is not performing better, because it has an amazing community. Really, really, really great people that I don't just buy the hype. I buy the people. I really like them. I believe in them. Go, unbelievable that it's under 100 BTC. I can't imagine that it doesn't have a couple of new inspiring moves forward sometime in the very near future. We actually need to see it kind of get back into this range. That's kind of the opposite of what some things were doing in that time, so it really showed that it could be going into the 1,500, 1,300 range at least, like it had before. So might have to continue bouncing. It was getting into 560, 660 range over here. Yeah, it's 630 and better. So we kind of thought it was going to do it there, and then Bitcoin kind of jerked it loose, unfortunately. So just keeping an eye on these different things. XVG is very low in comparison to where it would normally be. Same thing that we see happening with the rest of the market. So with SYS at 11 Bitcoin all the way up to, I mean, these are some really good coins in here that are this low right now. All the way up to HC at 93. Fuel was heading above 220 into 230 and got kind of pulled down again. Ion got pulled down again. ETC, I can't believe is that low in volume. That's amazing. That's a really sharp drop there. Pretty impressively amazing, kind of sad positions there. So as you and I both know, how low you can go is a really good buy-in point. Something that is going to put a lot of people off because, oh my goodness, look how low everything is. That's exactly where you get the best deals on things. So choose them very carefully, choose them very wisely. And, none of us know what happens next, but I have a pretty good feeling that there are some positive things around the horizon, unless regulations or world events just throw it completely off axis. We are getting closer and closer to mass adoption, and when that happens, whoa, buddy, is going to be something to see. So, I come back around once again to say mass adoption needs to come from liquidity, which needs to come from buying and selling your favorite cryptos on a legitimate exchange, and we choose Binance. So thank you so much for watching, and let's hope that Easter is a really great day for the completion of what IOST had set into effect. The fact that it made it back up to 270 means that it can do it again. So everybody, for now, Archangel Alts out.